Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for joining us at our FEO 2021 Virtual Summit and Tuesday Talks with FEO. I am Debbie Mann with Festivals and Events Ontario, and we'll be chatting with our guest this morning. But a bit of housekeeping: if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will get to them. I'll read them out to Russ, or Russ will read them out to himself. He might see them and do that. So, before I introduce our guest, I would just like to thank our sponsors for the 2021 summit. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to do this. So I'd like to thank Ticket Pro, SmartServe, Event Hub, Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture, OLG, and Destination Ontario. So for our talk today, our guest is Russ Ellis of CTRE Productions out in Owen Sound, right, Russ? Yep.
That's correct.
So welcome, Russ, and thanks for taking the time to chat with me and sharing your expertise in live streaming. Cool. Cool. So why don't you just introduce yourself a bit and tell us who you are and how you got here?
Okay, so my name's Russ, or Russ Ellis, and I'm the owner and founder of CTRE Productions and now CTRE TV. We've been in operation now for around 7-8 years and got ahead of the game really with the live streaming side of things. Our speciality is everything from small conferences, little hybrid meetings, all the way up to international sporting events, whether it's downhill ski championships or cycling events across multiple kilometers. So at this very moment, we're actually coming to you from our new headquarters in our main studio. It's I always get stuck with 3,500 or 3,500. Anyway, so it's a 3,500 square foot studio. And we're going to be playing around 3 different sets today.
Great. So the first question I'm just going to ask you right out of the gate here is, what do you say to people who believe that live streaming will stop people from coming to your festival or event?
I think that's a brilliant question. We get asked this super regularly. Everybody else here in the studio is just nodding. It's like, yeah, this is the question that we get asked. I think the question to ask, I always ask back, is think about the times that you wanted to go to an event, but you weren't able to make it because of other commitments, etc. I love going to live events. I love coming to the FEO conference. I was there last year. Why didn't I watch it live? Because I wanted to be there to get that feeling. Now, I've been to many other concerts and conferences virtually because I wasn't able to get there. So now what we've done, by having a virtual experience and live streaming, you're able to increase that audience to people who previously wouldn't have been able to make it.
Okay. And so how does it all work? Why don't you just share with us how it all works and what people can expect and how it can, right now, because of COVID, we're all doing virtual events. But in the future, how is it going to work in the future, or how can it work in the future?
So what I could actually do is I'm going to come to that in my main presentation.
Okay.
So I think it'd probably be best to answer that as we go through.
Perfect.
Because I want to finish off today on the future. There's some really, really cool, exciting stuff that is happening, and it's really changing drastically how people perceive live streaming, especially now, for example, one of our largest clients is actually in the States, and we never even go there, but we take full control from Owen Sound. So what I'd like to do, if it's all right with you, Debbie, is to start the presentation.
Go for it.
I'm going to highlight my 5 objectives that I really want people to take away from today. And then there's going to be 3 areas in there which are going to be open for questions. Now, I'm going to be able to see the different questions come in. If I don't answer straight away, I'm not trying to be naughty and ignore you. I'm just going to find the right appropriate time to answer them. And also feel free to challenge me on stuff. I'm okay with that. I love the fact if people are thinking outside the box, it's kind of what we specialize in. Okay, so with further ado, if it's all right with you, Debbie.
Over to you, Russ. You go for it.
Well, what I wanted to do to start off with is obviously welcome you. Thank you for giving up your precious time to listen to me. So I've got to make it worth your while. So to make it worth your while, I've chosen 5 different objectives that I want to hit for you. So the first one is we're going to define what is live streaming. There's a whole load of different concepts, but I think it's really important that we define what that is. The second one is we're going to demonstrate here and explain what can be done to enhance a live stream. Huge benefits to this, and we'll talk about that with regards to revenue generation in a bit. We're also going to give examples of how to create immersive, live, interactive experiences between your event, no matter how big or small, and your audience. We're then going to look at giving you clear examples, showing you how to use live streaming as a revenue generator and how to ensure that your event is cost neutral. That's a huge factor for all of our clients. The biggest one for us is to make sure that our client is generating money. Because at the end of the day, yes, we are putting on events, but it's really important to feed our families as well. Okay. And then the last one that I want to look at is I want to give you an insight into live streaming, where it's going, and the future, because it's moving quick. And I think you'd be really surprised with some of the avenues that they're going. It's definitely affected us to such a degree that we've moved into a new premises specifically to react to that. So without further ado, I'm going to get going. I should not have had a big sticky pastry before eating because my mouth is drying up. So I apologize, but cheers, and we'll get going. Okay, let's start off by defining what is live streaming. So live streaming is I'm going to call it transmission in a single direction of a video or an image or sound, so digital media from one location out to an audience. That's how I perceive live streaming. What we're going to be focusing on is not just live streaming that singular direction, but looking at live experiencing, because that's where it's going. Now, let's start looking. Now we've got an idea of live streaming about what we can do to enhance our little camera operations and our live streaming. So let's get going. Okay, so at the moment, I've got 3 different sets set up for us, and I'm going to be bouncing between them to give you an idea. The first thing that you can do to enhance a live stream is making sure that you've got a good quality camera. So at this precise moment in time, I'm using a little camera right there on our laptop. And don't get me wrong, it's good, but I want to enhance that a little bit. So I'm actually going to switch that out. And this is now where I press a button and wipe everything off, but here we go. So I am now in a much wider place, and I'm now talking to you over here with a much better camera. It gives me the ability that if I had an assistant or camera person, they could move the camera or what have you to suit. So at the moment, that gives me that option. Now, the other thing that I can do that makes a big difference for a lot of offices is get yourselves one of these. I'm going to hold it there so you can see against the reflection. It's a ring light. Now, you can clamp them onto the top of a screen or what have you, and it's just going to give you a better light. I'm not going to turn it on for this because you'll see some better lighting in a minute. So I'm going to put that in my drawer. The other thing that is well worth looking at, and it doesn't have to be expensive, but it makes a huge difference, is the microphone that you use. Now, I've got hooked up here, you can see it, a small microphone, and it's a lapel mic, and this will give me a better sound. Now, I'm just going to switch that out, and kapow, I should now be with my other microphone. So at this moment, what we've done is we've enhanced the camera, we've enhanced the microphone, and if we wanted to, we could have added an extra layer of lighting. So By having a wireless lav mic, the benefit to it is it allows movement. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to the second set and see how we can enhance it again. I'm going to bring my little pad and paper, and we're going to need a calculator a little bit later on to find out how we can generate revenue. And so I'm bringing that with me. Okay, I'm moving along, but before I do, I'm going to switch out where my speakers are coming from, because I'm going to be pretending I'm James Bond with a little in-ear listening device so I can hear any questions that maybe Debbie's got for me. Okay, so I'm going to switch that out right now. So there we go. So I've done that. Right, okay. Moving across, and I will see you in a second. I'm going to a couch. It's much more comfy. See you. Okay, that's better. Don't get me wrong, a table is comfy, but this, well, I kind of like it a lot. Right, I'm going to leave my calculator over here. Now, let's have a little look at what we can do to enhance things. So the first thing, you'll notice that I'm lit a little bit differently. And also, I have the ability to see what's going on all around me. So let's have a talk about sound. So I spoke briefly about the idea of having a microphone. It's going to make a difference. If we were being very pedantic about it, we would hide, obviously, the cables, etc. But for this, hey, I wanted you to see me put it on. Now, behind us, you can see we've got a soundboard. There's lots of different varieties. You can pick them up ranging from $40 to spending thousands. My suggestion is if you're going to use a microphone, make the effort and put it through a mixer. It'll make a little bit of difference, to say the very least. Now, the other thing that we've done is also process the sound to get rid of any issues with sibilants and S's and what have you, just so you've got a nice, crisp sound. Okay, so we're now sitting in a nicer layout. So one of the things that I want to do is take it to that next level. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add a logo to this. So kapow, I want a logo down the bottom here. Now we've got a little level of branding. So we've taken it from sitting behind a computer to having it slightly branded. The other thing that I'd really like to do is say, okay, let's take it to the next level again. How about let's put a banner up there? So I want a banner to go above me. And if you're going to put one, make sure it looks good. Try and make sure that it fits well and it ties in with what you're doing. A big one for our branding is black and white. So this works for us quite nicely. We're going to talk in a little bit about how we can use sponsorship and everything else, but we're going to come to that in a second. Okay, so we've gone from the first stage, sitting at a desk, upping it to having a logo and a banner. We're passing information across and it's nice and clean. Okay, let's jump to the next one. We're going to go to the green screen and to the green wall and have a little play. Okay, come with me. This way. Alrighty, so now I'm at a green location, and this is my little James Bondy bit, so I'm going to put that in my ear, tuck that behind me, boom, boom, boom. I always have problems with these, but it's going to work really nicely for this, and then I'm going to clip it in so I can hear anything that Debbie was to say to me, or anybody else. Okay, so at this moment now, I'm in a nice position, I can hear what's going on, and yeah, feeling pretty comfy. So, we've gone from desk, to a couch, to a logo, to a banner. All right, let's think how to up a level again. So it's really important when people are watching. I was lucky enough to be introduced by Debbie, but sometimes that's not possible when you're bringing a presenter on. So make the effort, and if you can, add one of these. Let's have some lower thirds. Justin, can I have some lower thirds on the bottom? Beautiful. Okay, so first of all, things to notice. He's branded it to match straight away. Okay, it is what it is. It looks a lot tidier. The other thing that we want to have a look at is we've got the logo. We can have that as necessary, but because it's on the big screen, we don't want to cramp it. The important thing to do is, as you're adding graphics, sometimes it's very easy to overlay everything far too much. Be careful with that. It's really important to manage your real estate of your screen. Okay. Let's look at sponsorship opportunities. So, what are we going to bring up? Let's have a look. Now, along the bottom here, we have a bottom banner, and you'll notice that I've got 5 different logos. We've got CTRE, we've got the stairwell, which is our version here in Owen Sound of the speakers corner, a bit of nod to nostalgia there. The Old Bank Studios, which is where we are at, our CTRE Productions, and One Live Web, which is our conferencing platform that we use here in-house. Okay, let's have a look at it on the side. I think the side's that side, there we go. Now, once again, it's looking clean. Now, why have we put a banner behind those logos? It just tightens up the image to make it look so much better. So at the moment, we've gone from sitting behind a desk to adding a theme above the top in the top banner, adding a logo, to now taking it to this level. Now, one of the things I'm going to ask people to do right here with me is any chance that we could flip out the backgrounds, a couple of options. So just so you're aware that really I am standing in a green space. So let's have a look at what options we've got. Here we go, I'm going black. I am gonna go somewhere else here. There we are. I kind of like this one, it's a nice shot. But our favorite really is that wall. So once everything's lit properly, if you're gonna use a green screen, this is a little tip, but it's super important. The backlighting. By putting a backlight on, what you're actually doing is you create a firm outline. If you don't have that, you have the pixelation. So when you're looking at me in a moment, it should be pretty crisp. Okay. So at the moment, we've just hit the first two objectives out of the way. We've defined what live streaming is, and we've given you some tips on what to do to enhance them. All right. Next one. How do you create an immersive event that is interactive with your audience and people enjoy? The most important question that you really, really, really need to ask is this one. Would you watch it yourself? Because if there's any slight hesitation, don't do it. It's not ready. Think about it. Would you dedicate your own time and sacrifice it from the family or other commitments to spend time watching your event? If the answer is no, question yourself as to why. So when people attend an event, there's normally a purpose behind it. They either want to get information, or they want to be entertained, or they want to be able to be involved. So it's very common in events to, I'm going to call it a cop-out in a way that I see it, and unfortunately, municipalities and sometimes county general meetings are quite guilty of this one. And also, I'm going to call them organizations where just regular meetings are taking place. And it's a voyeuristic approach. And what I mean by that is there's a camera and it's up on a wall and it's just streaming. There's no interaction, there's just a camera and there's sound. Now, yes, they are live streaming. Yes, you are obtaining the information, but are you enjoying it? That's my question. And I struggle. So if I'm turning on to certain meetings, what I'll do is sometimes I'll find when I want to go to watch to. But what I've noticed is a huge change in this, where we're actually having hosts which are adjusting this. So what I want you to always think about is, with a live stream, what can you do to, see, it's definitely not fake because I just kicked it and it wobbled. What can you do with your live event to make sure that people feel it's moving quick enough? And what I mean by that is, sometimes events will drone and go on, and it's filled with stuff that actually isn't relevant. If that happens, what's likely to happen is people are going to get up, they're going to go make themselves a cup of tea, get something from the fridge. They're going to get disrupted by the cat who's walking along the keyboard, which is probably happening to some of you right now. And at that point, they've gone. So what I want you to do is think about, okay, what can we do to make it better? So the biggest thing that I think anybody can do to make it better is have a host. And the example I'm going to use for this is a sporting event. Now, we had, at the start of this international sporting event, 19,000 people online. 19,000 people watching, the event's going, the host is interacting, it's all going great, and all of a sudden the host goes, I'm going to go and get a drink. Like, what? There's 19,000 people online. He is gone for 3.5 minutes. We were bleeding 750 people every 30 seconds. So we were losing 750 people every 30 seconds. Now, okay, that's a lot of people. How many people, if you've got 200 people watching a smaller event or a conference, imagine a percentage of that just vanishing because it's just dead air. So think about what we can do to make the situation of dead air never exist. So one of the things that I think is very important, let's have a look at a conference. And yes, it's important at the very start of a conference to have things moving along. But the question is, when people are coming online. Now today, when we started, we were lucky. We had Debbie online, we had Jay online, and they were welcoming people as they were coming into that room. For some places, that's not an option. Instead, there may be a live feed. So should we wait for the main presenter to walk up those steps to give a presentation, or should we fill that with something else? One of my suggestions is let's fill that right now, and let's fill that with the chance to interview people. So let's have a host, let's talk to sponsors. Let's find out, more importantly, why they wanted to be involved in this event, why it was important, and let's fill that time. So by coming online maybe 15 minutes ahead of time, we now actually have a pre-show. Now we're going to come back to that pre-show in a little bit when we're talking about revenue generation. But that pre-show is an opportunity to take it to the next level. Now, lunch times, breaking for coffee. Let's say we break for coffee, or we have an ablutions break, however you want to do it. It's 15 minutes. What are you going to do for 15 minutes if you're waiting and watching and it's dead? So how about let's fill it with something? Let's get the production team or yourselves to make a pre-roll. Let's get some pre-recorded video that you can play into the feed. Let's take it to that next one. If you can't do that, no problem. Let's chat to someone. Let's find out, let's talk to a guest or person who has attended. Even if they're virtually, let's bring them in. Let's fill that time. So that's a second option. We've got the pre-roll, and we've also now got a coffee break. Lunch can be a big one. So if you're looking at lunch, you're suddenly looking at an hour, maybe if you're lucky, sometimes 45 minutes. What are you going to fill on that? So you've got a couple of options. You could actually, one of the things that we found is quite popular is having organizations want to bring in a band or put on some form of entertainment. And it turns into almost like a show, a recap of the morning, followed on by what's happening coming up, and then a little bit of entertainment. Now, all of these, again, are possibilities for potential sponsorship, which we'll come to. I think it's really important in those opportunities to make that point to connect with your audience, either online or if you're in a hybrid situation, being able to talk to people there and bring them in and be like, hey, what do you think happened today? How do you think it went this morning? What did you take away? Now you're bringing those feelings into that presentation. The important thing here is it's not dead. So if ever you think you've got dead air or you're going to have it, find a way to block it. That's all I'm suggesting. So we're going to be having a look in case anybody's got any questions coming up so far. So up on the screen behind me, I'm going to be able to see some what's going on. So I'm just wondering if there's any things here.
There is one. Somebody wanted to know, let me just find it now. Where do you recommend that we buy these items? So you were talking about the light, the mixer, all that.
So I think one of the main things that I'd like you to think about there is you can get it online. Okay, that's one option. You can look at different forums. Also, if you're working with a video company or production company, ask people's opinion. We do consulting all the time. I think the key thing is don't just throw money at it. Find what you need. So it's a really good question. I would always go somewhere reputable, whether that's a rental location or what have you, and ask for advice.
Okay, great. Anastasia sent me in a question. Can he talk about any tips, suggestions for when live streaming is happening outdoors, example by the falls of equipment positioning?
Yeah, absolutely. So as soon as you're outside, the big thing with outside, you've got to be aware of ambient noise. So ambient noise is any noise that basically is in your surroundings. So one of the keys to this is to think about how you can isolate that. So what we're using here is a lapel mic, crazy sensitive. So even if there's stuff going on around me, we're able to do that. I would also make sure that you potentially look at using shotgun microphones. Now, shotgun microphones are, they're about this length and look like a stick, really, with a little fluffy sock on the end of them. But they're very directional. So quite often what we will do is we will set them up super low and pointing up towards the person's face. This means that when you're getting the video shot, so like I'm talking to you right now, you've got a cut of me. Beneath me, there would be two microphones pointing up, labeling you to get just a directed point. So I hope I kind of touched on that answer for you.
Anastasia also said, I did a live stream of Winter Festival of Lights back in December. By the way, to Japan, technology was a challenge, but Japanese audience loved it.
Awesome. So we're going to talk international shortly and the importance of that. Now, I've got a question here from Michael. Would be interesting to hear what event organizers should charge for these live stream on ad opportunities. So I'm going to use that as a segue in a minute, Michael, because that's where we're going. And I'm just going to see if are there any more questions at this moment. I'm going to have another 2 question periods in a session. Is there anything else, Anastasia?
Oh, I have one for you.
Yeah, please.
So you said you do remote. You do remote events, and you do it all from your studio up in Owen Sound. Will you be talking about how that works? Absolutely.
So actually behind me, we've got, and we'll talk about these in a little bit. So you'll see these lovely little things here. I've got a whole series of different items that we actually ship. This one's just come back from Los Angeles, around the world and control them all remotely. So yeah, we're going to be finishing off on that when we're talking about One Live Web and the interactivity of that and the future. It's really, really exciting. So yeah, Debbie, I'll be on that.
There's another question here. How necessary is it to get a professional sound engineer for live streaming? Is there any software that can help amateurs figure this out themselves?
Okay, Brandon, so that's going to come back to one very simple thing. First of all, Brandon, we need to identify who your audience is. So what I'm going to use here is an example, and I'm going to use Zoom, Skype, and Google Hangouts as my example. So these are all platforms that we're all quite familiar with. But what's really important to notice with them is they were designed specifically for the transferring of audio. They then added the video aspect. So quite often you will find that the video will drop, but the sound quality will always maintain. Now, the reason I raise that is sound is super important. So we have a dedicated person today just working on sound. Her name's Monique, and she's doing a fantastic job. So what I want to say to you is, do you need a sound engineer? If it's a huge, an event where people are being asked to pay money for it, I would make sure you've got someone who knows what they're doing. If it is for a church or what have you, I would get training. Feel free to, wherever you're buying your equipment from, to ask them and say, hey, okay, I'm buying this mixer. Any chance that you can show me how this thing works? Guaranteed, or I say guaranteed, I hope they would be far-sighted enough to see that you're going to be a valued customer in the future, and it would make sense to help you as best as they can. I hope that helps, Brandon.
Leanne asks, what platform do you recommend to live stream, and have you experienced any legal concerns with live streaming?
Okay, Leanne, that's a lovely question, and we've completely bypassed this, and I'll explain a little bit how. Okay, so Legal concerns with live streaming. Yeah, how I look at it is you need to always try and make sure that you're covering your bum. You need to. Have you asked permission to make sure that people are being live streamed? Have you got them to sign waivers or permissions to use the images? Make sure you've got all of that done. The reason this all kicked in really was, I believe it was a judge who got caught on camera with a mistress by a Google, the Google map cars that drive around. Anyway, the poor person, or not poor person, the cheeky person got caught on camera with the person he shouldn't have been. Ever since then, it's been crazy tight on use of images. Where I'm going is, legally wise, you need to make sure that you've got permission to do it. Now, with the era of the phone being as it is, there's so many people streaming stuff anyway, you need to at least make sure that anybody who is deliberately in the shot is being covered. There may be people in the background, but you've got to do your best with either people running around with waivers or what have you. One of the things that we do for events and conferences is we blanket sign all of the entrances, stating that if you pass a certain point, you are giving rights to be filmed and for us to use the images. But it's something very important to work on. Now, platform-wise, we also need to be aware of YouTube, Facebook, etc., with regards to streaming and music. Now, it's super important that people know that the artists need to be paid for stuff that they have done. Fully respect it. They need to be recompensed for the effort put in. That being said, I've actually seen it where music in the background has triggered a platform to shut down. So it happened to us a couple of times, a few years back. So we actually have our own dedicated platform, and basically we have our own version of Netflix or YouTube. So we've bypassed that way, but still pay our dues as necessary to performers. Okay.
I wonder sorry, Russ, on that note, I just wonder if we should be looking at SOCAN and the different groups for the rights of musicians to see how live streaming works in that.
Exactly. So one of the things that we will do occasionally, depending on, and I say occasionally now because it used to be all the time, was reaching out to these agencies and saying, okay, this is what we're doing. Are we following the correct protocols? Are we doing it right to make sure it works? I'm a big believer in transparency, and as long as you're transparent about what's going on, at least then nobody thinks you're trying to be a little bit awkward with it. So are we okay to move on to the next little bit, Debbie?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. I'll be real honest with you. I'm going to go back to the couch. It's a lot more comfy. So I'm going to go and sit down there. Okay. So let's have a little chat down here. Awesome. I'm just bringing my little in-ear listening system. Okay. Oh, that's better. Nice. So you have to excuse my little slippers. I'm nice and comfy here. Okay. So the next thing that I really want to look at is how we can use live streaming as a revenue generator. So the first thing, and this is going to sound really obvious, but sometimes it seems to be missed. Just because you're having an event and you're going to live stream something doesn't mean to say people are going to show up. So you've got to make sure that you tell people it exists. You've got to promote it. You've got to give enough lead time. You've got to make sure that that's out there and that's going. The other option for you to do is, obviously, you can sell tickets. So if you're selling tickets, I want you to start thinking a little bit off skew of the normal way of that. So let's say, for example, we have a film festival, or we have a small concert or small conference or what have you. So I can buy my ticket to attend. Can I also buy my ticket and have a meal? Can I buy my ticket, have a meal, and get the T-shirt? If it's a concert, can I buy my ticket, get my meal tag, get my T-shirt, and get a free download of the music? Right? So now we've got different combinations. Look at who you can partner with in that area. The reason I want you to look at who you can partner with in that area is those people are also going to be promoting your event. So that's a really important one. Now, the other thing that I want you to think about is very simple things that you can do, obviously like your 50-50 draws and silent auctions. I never understand the concept of a silent auction. In Europe, we don't really have them. I get it over in Canada, and it's kind of quite fun. So we can also do those. Now, a really cool thing that we're playing with and loving is creating exclusivity. Now, what I mean by that is the ability to have private viewing areas. And at this point, you're like, well, what the hell are you talking about? But so on our platform, what we actually have is, let's say we have a theatrical performance. We have the ability to create a designated virtual room or theater box where you can sit with your friends and text chat whilst the show is going on, and then video chat when the show is not. So now we've created that exclusivity, which also you can have sponsorship to as a source of revenue. Okay, so let's talk sponsorship. So the first one, I've got a couple of little notes here. These are really important, and that's why I want to make sure that I nail this exactly. So when it comes to sponsorship, why should a sponsor sponsor your event? Well, they've got to get something out of it. Yes, okay, you can give them analytics, fair enough. But why do they want to do it? More often than not, it's exposure. And then people want to know what else is available. So what I mean by that is, let's say I know everybody who knows me, but I'm not interested in talking to that group. I'm interested in talking to all of the other sponsors' followers. So by sponsoring an event, it gives me access to those other sponsors. And I think that is really, really important. The other thing that I need you to think about when it comes to sponsors is, who is your ideal sponsor? So it took me a while to try and work this out, but financially, this seems to make the most sense. I look at sponsorship in two different ways. Everybody loves the whale that is one great big sponsor. Don't get me wrong, they're fantastic. All that money at once. Now, they're really hard to get, and that doesn't often happen. The other option is lots of smaller sponsors that are local. So I'm going to see if we've got a top banner here that we can bring up, and let's see if we've got one of those. Now, above me, we've got 5 banners. Sorry, we've got 5 lovely little logos. Each one of those you could charge a price for. Now, I believe we also have some with some numbers on them. And what we're going to do for those is, so let's work on this one. We have 5 now across the top. That could be split into 5 individual sections, or I could have CTRE TV on 2 or 3 or 4, or I could have the whole banner that way. So by breaking it down into sections allows you to split up the potential revenue. Now, one of the things that we also do is you have the ability to rotate those banners. So for an event that we put on, we actually had 7 banners, each one with the same background, but 7 different sets of logos. Those were rotating every 30 seconds. Some sponsors decided to buy a position on each location, others didn't. Now, the reason I want to show you that is it gives you the chance to take the smaller businesses. Now, smaller businesses would love to be involved in national events, but quite often they're overlooked. So let's say for $150 or $200, you could be linked to a national event. You're like, well, that doesn't seem like a lot. Well, okay, so let's take that 200, let's times that by 5. Now we're at 1,000. Now let's add 7 of them. Now we're at 7,000, and we haven't even love that grammar, haven't even spoken about gold sponsors and what we could offer them. Now, the important thing is not to overcrowd anything at all. So we can also have a side banner, which is down on this side, I believe, and that can be broken up as necessary as well on that one. So I don't know if we have the side banner. There we go. So here we've still got a nice clean shot, but we're able to rotate them out on that one. Now, when it comes to sponsorship, let's look at those numbers. We could have sponsors for the pre-show. Do you remember we spoke about interviewing people and making sure that that time was relevant? Let's run pre-roll. Let's run pre-made videos of our gold sponsors. Let's hold an interview with our gold sponsors. Let's ask that question that's super important, which you can now use as a soundbite to give to your sponsor by asking the question, okay, so why did you choose to sponsor this event? What is it about this event that makes it so important to your business? So straight away here, we have an extra little clip that you can give to that sponsor. Okay, so we've spoken a little bit about that. Coffee breaks. There's another chance for you to have it sponsored by. Now, if you're going for those big sponsors, you can, but feel free to use those smaller sponsors at $50, $100. When they start adding up, it really does grow quite nicely. Now, I'm going to shift your head a little bit with regards to sponsorship. Because of the analytics that we know nowadays about what's going on, it's really important that we think about audience and who is the true audience that you're going for your sponsors. So I'm going to use snowmobiling as an example. Now, coming from England and growing up on a little island just off Africa, the concept of snowmobiling to me was crazy exotic. I mean, people on these things that look like motorbikes howling through the snow. I'm like, what the heck? The only person I ever knew who had that was James Bond. I mean, come on. I've never seen anybody else on one. So I'm using that as an example because where we are up in Owen Sound, snowmobiling is quite common. And people are like, it's a snowmobile. Now, let's say we live stream that event. You could also promote that in the UK. You could promote that in Australia. You could promote that in South Africa. There are niche audiences all over the world that would be fascinated with what you're doing. So where I'm going is now you have one set of content which can be promoted throughout the world, which also means you could have different sponsorship for those different locations around the world, or for those different areas around Canada. So you could have a different page for each province or region or however you wanted to go. Anyway, that's one of the things for you. So I'm going to open up here for any questions. So I'm going to ask Debbie if you can read me any questions and I'll address them before talking about the future.
Haven't seen any right now.
Any questions, anybody? People are, maybe nobody's typing away at this moment.
They're captivated, Russ.
Or else like, I'm
there's
done,
a lot.
I'm going for my cup of coffee.
There's a lot in what you're talking about, right? And, you know, one of the questions I had is can you do, what software do you use for the lower thirds?
So there's lots of different options there with the lower thirds. What we actually
What does that mean, Russ, the lower thirds?
So if you think about the screen, you've got the top, you've got the middle,
okay,
and then you've got the bottom. So basically that's how I kind of remember it. And it's the lower third, or as opposed to the top third or middle third, I suppose.
Got it.
That one. So depending on what you're using for live streaming, normally you'll find that your live streaming platform or encoder would allow you to add 1 or 2 graphics. The more graphics that you go with, sometimes you will require an extra device to take it to that level. Okay, so if I don't have any questions,
go ahead.
I'm going to jump back to the next bit and let's talk about the future and where we're going. Okay, being very cognizant of everybody's time here. All right. Okay. Perfect. So let's have a little look about where live streaming is going. So live streaming is morphing into, we don't even really use the word live streaming anymore here. We use live experiencing because it's interactivity. And without that, you're just sending an image. You need to be able to react to people. So what we've actually been doing is we've been using our own platform with One Live Web to create the ability to interact. So imagine watching a band and all of a sudden on your screen becomes the ability to choose what is that next song that you want to hear. We're getting ready to put on our own cooking show at the moment, and we're designing that. And one of the concepts that we're going to be using is for the audience to be able to select the ingredients that the chefs are picking. So this type of interactivity is what's really kind of crazy important. The other thing that we've noticed is there's an awful lot of having to navigate away from a site. So you've spent all this time getting someone to your site, and then you want people to navigate off and go somewhere else. But if they do that, it's how do they come back, and how do you control this sort of thing? So one of the features that we've made sure exists are having live information help. So we actually have live virtual help desks, a little bit like what we're on right now. So let's have a little bit of a look at some of the things that we've been doing, and then we'll talk about SRT and moving down the future. So, okay, let's have a little look at this here. So this here is one of ours, and our virtual conference center is called the Winchester Suites. That's kind of irrelevant, but where I'm going over here is along this point. It's like my little pointer, it's my pen, it's nice, eh? So up here, I've got 32 different options of where to go. I've also got the ability, each one of these is an action or a possibility to have an interactive experience. So let's say we're even looking at a meeting. You want to know at any point in time how many people are online, what are they doing, who is online, who's not online. So let's pull up briefly an example so we can see that. So I'm kind of putting my hand here deliberately to kind of block the names. But on this one at the moment, you can see there's one person online, and that's actually someone from our help desk here. And then we've got 219 people offline. But this means at any point in time, if necessary, I can actually address someone. So I could turn around and say, hey, Debbie, I can see you online. Have you got a question specifically about this for your FEO conference? Or Jay, how is this relevant to you? But now I'm making it personal because I'm addressing them specifically. Okay, let's switch to the next one for me. Now, what we've got here is the ability for people, it's very straightforward setup and clean, for people to interact. So it says here, please rank the delivery to leverage knowledge into your regional practices and strategies. That's one hell of a question. But where I'm going is there's 4 different options there. Everybody can adjust, and as we then switch, we can now see the live responses. So we're going to see that example pop up. And now right here, I can see live responses and able to react and be like, oh my gosh, 17 people were really focused on affordable housing, whereas 3 were more invested in fostering social capital. So it allows us to react immediately to that. The other thing that we've found very important is people still need to see each other. So we have different areas where people can chat. So let's have a little look at that one. So right here, there's an example, and we're going to use Grey County as an example. This was a trade booth that they had. And right here, you've got the option to chat with us now in text or chat face to face. So where I'm going there is, thank you very much, we've put that back to that screen, wonderful. So what we've now got the option here of doing is being able to react in live time. So what we do is we stream out on 3/4 or 5/6 of a screen, and on 1/6 of the screen, usually down on the left-hand side here, we usually have it set up that we're able to control and get feedback from people so we can adapt our performance in real time. So let's say, for example, you're having a meeting or a gala and you want to hand out awards and you want people to vote. Bang, you've got that response and you can react to it in a live format. Okay, let's go and talk about the future. I'm wondering if we can bring up everybody else online. So let's have a little look at the future. Okay, Michael, I can see you've got a question, and I'm going to come back to that in a second for you, Michael. Okay? All right, so let's have a little talk about where the future's going with live streaming. Now, the problem with live streaming is, in true live streaming, there's always a delay. And the delay is because the image is going from the camera into an encoder, up to a satellite, down to a server somewhere, up to a satellite, and then to your location. And it's been processed along the way. There's no reason for it to be so long, but there's these little lag times built in. Now, what we want to do is see how we can react to that. So the main thing that we've been looking at, and we're lucky that we've been asked to be the main rollout test location in North America, is being able to control stuff in almost real time in 1/100th of a second lag time. So what we're actually doing is we are sending cameras such as this little one here. Now this is, we call it a block. Now this is a specific block camera, and it connects directly up to the internet, and it also has a built-in encoder. This means that we can control this from Owen Sound. Now, the beauty of this camera is it's point, it's shoot, you set it, you love it. Now, whilst I love that camera, the other thing to contemplate is this lovely thing here, which I kind of touched on earlier. And these are our favorites. These are our little PTCs, or our little robots. Now, what we are now able to do is send these robots. Wonderful. Which camera am I going? Are we going over here? There we are. Okay. So this lovely little camera here allows us to send them to a different location. We once again hook them up to the internet, and we can control them remotely. So how do we do that? What we actually do is we hook them up with a router, typical router, hook them all together, and now we can take control and cut between them. Now, the reason that this is so interesting to me and everything else in my little brain is events know, I believe, that live streaming is here to stay. The event industry is going to take a while to get back, and we're going to have to go hybrid. So a hybrid is that combination of having people on site but also live. So imagine now being able to pick up the phone and say, send me a system. And we send you a box. It arrives in the post or courier, however you want to call it. You unpack it, you give us a call, you plug it into the router and internet, and instantly we have control and we can add the graphics over the top. We're now getting ready and already working with bars and a theater and also an organization in the States using this technology. We actually used it for an international chef event, bringing people in from Vegas, Arizona, San Francisco, and LA, and controlled it all from here. So one of the reasons we moved here specifically is to get that opportunity where we can have areas a little bit like military drone pilots, but flying instead of drones, different cameras, and pumping it out at the right quality. So that's where the future, I see everything going. And it's exciting, but also it's a little bit nervy because there's a lot of trust in there. So that's where we are. Okay, so let me jump to Michael's question, and then I'm going to come back to this one. So what factors and variables should one consider when pricing the logo placement opportunities you covered? Ooh. Yeah, that's a horrible question, Michael. Okay, so my answer to that is it depends on what you're doing. Ask yourself what you would feel comfortable paying for it if you were that organization. I look at it as, and don't get me wrong, I love Starbucks and I love Tim Hortons. I can buy a Starbucks every other day type of thing, but I can drink Tim Hortons all day. My one is, what would you rather sell? I'm not saying that you need to differentiate drastically between them, but how many, is it easier sometimes to sell more smaller ones than larger ones? It kind of goes back to my blue whale one. Feel free to contact me afterwards, Michael, and I can actually talk to you specifically about it, but it's really kind of what the market will bear. But I always think you've got to make sure that you're able to provide the value to match what the sponsor's paying. That's it in my book. Always act in the best interest of the client or your sponsor. In that case, you can't go far wrong. Okay.
How do you, I have another question for you. How do you, if we wanted to go international and we were setting this up, how do you get people to come to your event? I mean, I'm thinking with ourselves, we might work with the International Festivals and Events Association or tourism in different regions across Canada, but how do we expand beyond that?
So what I think you need to do is you need to make sure that you can have it that who are the like-minded individuals in that country that would find a benefit?
Got it.
So I'm actually going to use an example of goats. And I know that may sound a little bit weird, but we just did an amazing agricultural conference. And when we were doing our feedback, we were thinking, okay, what do we do next to enhance everything? And with the goat side of stuff, every single country that we could think of had goats in it. So it makes sense that there's an audience in each of those countries. The important thing then is how to reach out to them as well. So I'm just going to ask if we can come back up on this one here. So let's think about the goats. That's an opportunity. Now, something that we haven't touched on, and I think it's crazy vital. Yes, Canada is bilingual, but we've been looking really heavily into Urdu and other languages that match our surroundings. Let's just think about all of the other communities out there who have a strong native language. And I think it's really important to offer that opportunity out. So let's say you have a host or you have an event. With that event or form of content, you could have an English host, you could have a French host, you could have a French host, a Spanish host, a German host, same content, but potentially all different sponsors. Okay, what else have we got here? Hey, Dave, that's a lovely question. And it would kind of depend on what you need. So you notice that I dodged that specifically because I'm live. So it's not just the camera package and everything else that you get. So first of all, you get the consultation. You then get to work with the producers and everything else, and it kind of varies. How I always work, and everybody here kind of laughs at my example, but the first thing that it's really important, and I think for any production company to do, is to define the objective of what you're trying to achieve. So the example I always use is if you were here right now, we could walk down a road and we could get an ice cream. It's $3 each. We could also, and that's our objective, is getting that ice cream. We could take a taxi and then the price of that ice cream has gone up, or we could buy a car and it's gone up considerably. So I always say, let's define what ice cream you want, and I'll offer you chocolate sprinkles if you need. And then you can choose what toppings you want on top of that. So I didn't answer your question, Dave, but I would need to know specifically what you need to deliver your objective first.
Do you work with any clients in China? I'm curious to know. If yes, how do you deal with all the restrictions and totally different set of social media rules?
So it's interesting you raise that. So at the moment, no, but in the last 2 weeks, we've actually been approached about working with China and also India. So I think my best answer to this, because I don't have a good one, is carefully. I always act in the way that if I was in court, to make sure that I've acted in the best interest of everybody involved. So that's kind of my answer. Sorry, it's not a very good one for you, honestly. It's a good one. Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of other questions and then we have to wrap up, Russ, because we're running out of time. But just real quickly, are there any, did you go over any golden rules for live streaming? You went through that, did you not?
I don't know if we did, but I mean, the main golden rule for live streaming is make sure you know who your audience is. Make sure that you've got your sound sorted out and expect something to go wrong. That's going to sound really weird, but it's live. Things happen. Phones ring, internet cuts out, rain happens, weather happens, things collapse. Take a breath, solve it, and move on. So for example, for today's event, I wanted to make sure that this works. So we actually have 3 sources of internet connected into our studios today in case something happens. We've got a designated spot going out, and we've got different cameras. So we've got a backup to a backup to a backup. Work the assumption it's going to go wrong and try and mitigate those problems before they exist.
I think you covered the other one. And how do I know that the audience is there and what they're thinking? You did cover that in an earlier slide. So based on your platform, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's it for me. That has been there's a lot of information, like Amanda said, there's a lot to digest in this.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. People can reach out to you if they have any other
Yeah.
questions.
Absolutely. I mean, I think they should be able to bring up my email, and that should appear on the screen.
Okay.
I say that momentarily.
There it is.
Goes.
Russ at CTREproductions.com. Russ, thank you so much for taking time with us. And, you know, you're the last Tuesday talks of our FEO Summit, and it was a great ending to Tuesday. So thank you so much. A quick reminder that the next scheduled sessions will be on tomorrow, Wednesday the 24th from 2 to 5 p.m. We're having networking and breakout sessions. We are going to have a virtual marketplace. And then we have Kyle Simpkins going to be talking about juggling mental health and showing us juggling while he's talking about it. So really appreciate that. Again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Ticket Pro, SmartServe, Event Hub, Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture, OLG, and Destination Ontario. And thank you all for spending this time with us this morning. Thanks, Russ. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Goodbye.